Welcome back. So we have finished two parts in CNS. So now we'll be doing with the third part. And the last topic we discussed was on morphine, that is contraindication. So hopefully that is also very clear till now. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the next topic that will be highlighting on the opioid antagonist. So looking at the topic we would like to discuss, it is opioid antagonist. Okay, opioid antagonist. So under this, if you would have seen the classifications frequently, you will remember that it was naloxone, naltrexone, and nalmefene. So these are nothing but everything ends with N. Okay, that is the easier way to remember. So on frequent reading you'll get it. So naloxone, naltrexone, and nalmefene. Okay, so these are nothing but they are pure opioid antagonist. They are pure opioid antagonist. Okay, and it has no agonistic activity. Okay, now looking at the uses of naloxone, just looking at some of the uses. So now we'll be looking at naloxone. So talking about uses of naloxone, it is used in treatment of morphine and also opioid poisoning, as it's an antagonist. So opioid poisoning. And then moving ahead, it can also be used in case of opioid overdosage. Okay, in case of opioid overdosage, it can be used. That is, it rapidly reverses the. So in case of severe respiratory depression, that is in case of severe respiratory depression cases, what happens is it reverses the state. So it is useful there. And next point, it also is used to treat neonatal asphyxia. Neonatal asphyxia. Okay. Now just recapping the uses, it is used in case of severe morphine and opioid poisoning. It is used in case of opioid overdosage, that is in conditions where there should be reversal of respiratory depression, and also it is used in case of neonatal asphyxia. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking also at few points on naltrexone. I'll be moving to the next page. So this is naltrexone. So what is naltrexone? So looking at naltrexone, it is more potent. Okay, so it is more potent and it has a longer duration of action. So increased longer duration of action, okay, compared to that of naloxone, right? So compared to naloxone and naltrexone, it is more potent, increased, it's more potent. Okay, and looking at some of the use, it is used for opioid blockade therapy, the same thing. So opioid blockade therapy, okay, and also to prevent a relapse in opioid dependent individuals, fine. And next point would be in treatment of alcoholism also. So in case of alcoholism, it can also be used. So just to recap, naltrexone, it is more potent, it has a longer duration of action compared to that of the naloxone. And opioid blockade, it's used in opioid blockade therapy, and also in case of alcoholism it can be used. And I'll also be giving a note on methyl naltrexone. So as the name suggests, it is nothing but a derivative of naltrexone, and this has only peripheral actions. So this has peripheral action, and it is used. So this methyl naltrexone is used in case of constipation, due to opioids. Hopefully I'm clear. So it is used in constipation due to opioids. Now moving ahead, just a second. Now moving ahead, we'll have nalmefene. We'll be talking about nalmefene. So what is nalmefene? It is administered intravenously. So we can see that it is administered intravenously. So we can say it is IV, and it has a longer, it's longer acting than naloxone. So it is longer acting. So here, when comparing the three drugs, what we get to know is that naloxone, it has a shorter duration of action. So now this nalmefene, it is again longer duration of action, and it is useful in treatment of opioid overdosage. So again, opioid overdosage. Just to recap, nalmefene given IV, and it is more potent than naloxone, and it is used in case of opioid overdosage. Now, moving ahead, we'll be looking at an important drug. We'll be jumping into Parkinsonism. So this classification is important, and I won't be discussing that. Now, just looking at what is known as L-DOPA or levodopa. So this is very important. So as we know, this L-DOPA, it cannot cross the dopamine. It cannot cross the BBB, blood-brain barrier. So it is nothing but it is administered in form of levodopa. Okay. Now, looking at the dopamine, what happens is dopamine interacts with the D2 receptors. Looking at how it acts on the D2 receptors in the basal ganglia. Okay, B2 receptors in basal ganglia. So this produces anti-Parkinsonism effect. Okay, now looking at, let's move ahead. Okay, now looking at the next, that is the pharmacokinetics. This levodopa is rapidly absorbed from the small intestine. So it is rapidly absorbed in the small intestine by the active transport, and it is usually given about 1 hour before the meal. Because the amino acids, this is important to note, the amino acids in food can interfere with its absorption. So it is given 1 hour before meal. Okay, and now moving to the adverse effects. Uses, we know it is used in Parkinsonism. Now looking at the adverse effects, we'll be looking at each system wise. So in case of CVS, it can lead to postural hypotension. Okay, and also can result in tachycardia, and also palpitation. Okay, now it can also result in dyskinesia. This is nothing but it is abnormal involuntary movements. It can result in this as well. So this mainly includes tremors, tics. Okay, now there can also be alteration in sensation of taste. That can be found. Now it can also lead to CNS manifestations such as insomnia, confusion, delusion, euphoria, okay, and depression, nightmares. So now jumping to the GIT, looking at gastrointestinal, it's common. It can result in nausea, vomiting, and anorexia. Okay, so quickly recapping about dopamine. So this levodopa, it is administered because the dopamine, it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. So in case of the levodopa, it is easier to cross the blood-brain barrier and show its effect. So levodopa is administered, and this dopamine, it acts on D2 receptors and of the basal ganglia and results in anti-Parkinsonism effect. Now looking at the adverse effects, before that we'll look at the pharmacokinetics. So it acts on the small intestine by active transport. It's absorbed, and it is mostly given before meal because the amino acids present in food can interfere with its absorption, And looking at the adverse effects, we'll be looking at system wise, that is in case of CVS, it can result in postural hypotension, and also it can result in tachycardia, palpitation, tremors, and tics. And looking at, there can be alteration of taste as well, and it can result in involuntary movements, and the term used is dyskinesis. And looking at CNS, it can result in insomnia, confusion, delirium, also nightmares as well. Okay. And in case of GIT, common nausea, vomiting, anorexia. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the exact mechanism of action. Okay, so this levodopa, okay, so assume this is the barrier. Okay, so here there is CTZ D2 receptors. Okay, and here we have levodopa. It is converted to dopamine, and this dopamine, what happens, it interacts with the D2 receptors, and this takes place in the basal ganglia. Fine. And finally it ultimately results in relieves Parkinsonism. Okay, so here this levodopa, it comes as levodopa, and this levodopa, that is dopamine, is the product. As we know, it can result in nausea, vomiting, and here we have peripheral dopa carboxylase. With its presence, it is converted to dopamine, and inhibition of this peripheral dopa decarboxylase is by carbidopa or benserazide. Okay, and looking at this dopamine, it has effect on, it acts on heart. Okay, so this is heart. So the effect on heart is tachycardia, palpitation, postural hypotension. Okay, and this postural hypertension, blood vessel. Okay, now I'll be quickly telling it again. So this levodopa, it can convert back to dopamine in presence of peripheral decarboxylase, and this is inhibited in presence of carbidopa or also benserazide. And looking at this dopamine, dopamine acts on heart and can result in conditions such as tachycardia, palpitation, and postural hypertension as well. And the main action is levodopa converted to dopamine, acts on D2 receptors of the basal ganglia, and ultimately it results in the Parkinsonism symptoms. It is relieved. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the other combinations. So as I mentioned earlier, I had given a question, that is levodopa and carbidopa is often combined, and why is it done? So looking at the main advantage, it increases the bioavailability, it increases the T-half, it reduces the GI side effects such as nausea and vomiting. Okay, hopefully it's easy till now. And then also the CVS effect, CVS side effects such as tachycardia, hypertension, and also the cardiac arrhythmias. Okay, and now moving ahead, it also has better compliance. Okay, and also it helps to reduce the on-off phenomenon. It decreases the on-off phenomenon. Okay, so let me just recap. So this levodopa and carbidopa combination is common, and it is combined because of its advantage, that is increased bioavailability, T-half, as well as there is reduced GI symptoms such as nausea and vomiting, and it relieves CVS effects such as tachycardia and also hypotension and cardiac arrhythmias, and it has a better compliance, and it reduces the on-off phenomenon. Okay, now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the MOB inhibitors. Now, looking at these MOB inhibitors, let me go to the next slide, and now we'll be looking at MAOB inhibitors. Okay, so this mainly includes selegiline and also rasagiline, just to name few. Okay, selegiline, rasagiline. Okay, so what happens is they irreversibly inhibit the MAOB enzyme. Okay, and this MAOB enzyme is inhibited enzyme. So this is inhibited. So this enzyme is inhibited, and point to note is they are given orally, and they do not inhibit MAO in the periphery. This needs to be noted. That is, in periphery, they do not inhibit MAO in the periphery, and they retard the metabolism of dopamine in brain and prevents the toxic metabolite formation as well. So what happens is it retards the dopamine metabolism. Okay, now moving ahead, the rasagiline, it is more potent and longer acting. This needs to be known. So looking at rasagiline, it is more potent. So it's more potent, and also it is longer acting compared to selegiline. This needs to be noted. And single dose would be inadequate. Single dose is single dose is adequate. Okay, and now moving forward, we'll be looking at some of the drug interactions, and before that, let me quickly recap. So MAOB inhibitors, so main examples are selegiline, rasagiline, and the main task is by inhibiting the MAOB enzyme in the brain. Okay, it irreversibly inhibits. Okay, it is mainly given orally, and what happens is the dopamine. Okay, so the main point to note is that MAO is not inhibited in the periphery, and the main action is it retards dopamine metabolism. And now just comparing the two drugs, that is selegiline and rasagiline. Rasagiline is more potent and it is longer acting than selegiline, and often a single dose is effective. Okay, and another point which I missed is it also reduces the on-off phenomenon, and also the wearing off phenomenon. Okay, so this point is also to be noted. So the on-off phenomenon and the wearing off phenomenon is also reduced. Now let's quickly look at the drug interactions, and this drug interaction is mainly with the L-DOPA, that is levodopa. So now quickly looking at L-DOPA. Okay, so this is into. So these are the drugs. First we'll be looking at MAO inhibitors. So in case levodopa is given with the MAO inhibitors, so what happens is there's inhibition of MAO, and so the metabolism is affected. Metabolism of dopamine is affected. So it is affected. So this is a symbol for affected. Okay, so it is affected, and then what happens is the plasma concentration is increased. Plasma concentration of dopamine is increased. Okay, so obviously in case of metabolism is increased, there will be increase in plasma concentration. So the plasma concentration is increased, and it can result in hypertensive crisis. So it results in hypertensive crisis. Now looking at the second point, that is in case it acts with pyridoxine. Okay, so we'll be looking at pyridoxine. So now in case it acts with pyridoxine, it can result in, so what happens is it promotes the peripheral conversion of L-DOPA to dopamine. Okay, so this was discussed earlier. So it promotes peripheral conversion of L-DOPA to dopamine, that is in presence of pyridoxine, and decreases the therapeutic effect of L-DOPA. Okay, now looking at the L-DOPA with the antihypertensive agents. Okay, antihypertensive agents. Okay, now looking at these antihypertensive agents, there is worsening of postural hypertension. So there's postural hypertension, this is worsened. Okay, so it affects this. And next we'll be looking at L-DOPA with the metoclopramide. Okay, so what happens is the metoclopramide, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, blocks the D2 receptors in the basal ganglia, and cause the drug-induced Parkinsonism. Okay, so let me just write it for you. So this metoclopramide, it crosses the blood-brain barrier and blocks D2 receptor. Okay, and it results in drug-induced Parkinsonism. So it's important to know that. Now I'll be quickly recapping what we have discussed here in this page. So L-DOPA when given with MAO inhibitors, so this affects the metabolism of dopamine. Okay, and what happens is the plasma concentration is increased. Okay, so it retards the metabolic dopamine. Okay, and this results in plasma concentration of dopamine, increased concentration, and it results in hypertensive crisis as well. Now other point is, in case of pyridoxine, what happens is it results in peripheral conversion of L-DOPA to dopamine. Okay, and the therapeutic effect of the L-DOPA is reduced. And now moving ahead to antihypertensive agents, there is worsening of the postural hypertension. And next point would be L-DOPA with metoclopramide, that is it crosses the blood-brain barrier and results in drug-induced Parkinsonism. Now moving ahead, hopefully the drug interaction is also very clear to all of us. Now very interesting topic, that is atypical antipsychotics. Okay, so this is nothing but the topic of atypical antipsychotics. Okay, now looking at atypical antipsychotics, they affect mainly the 5-HT2 blockade. Okay, and they have a weak D2 blocking effect as well. Okay, so main is 5-HT2 blockade, and they have a weak D2 blockade as well. Now we'll be comparing some drugs and the common points. So we'll be looking at clozapine and olanzapine. Okay, so these are the examples of atypical antipsychotics. Okay, and what they do is they mainly block a 5-HT2 as mentioned earlier, and they have a weak D2 as well as mentioned earlier, and they also block the alpha-1, H1 and the muscarinic receptors. Okay, so they are also blocked, and it results in causes sedation as well as hypotension. Okay, and rarely it can also result in extrapyramidal symptoms. Now, okay, so these are the adverse effects, uses, some bulletin points to know. Now we'll be moving on the uses. So where is it used? So looking at clozapine, it is mainly used in the schizophrenia. Okay. Now looking at olanzapine, it is used in treatment of schizophrenia as well, and also mania in case of bipolar disorders. Okay, that is, they suppress both positive symptoms such as thought disorders, okay, and also negative symptoms such as, so what happens is they suppress positive and negative symptoms. This point is important to know. Now jumping to the before I move further, I'll just recap what I've done. So we have atypical antipsychotics. They mainly act on 5-HT2 blockade and act on the D2 receptors. Now looking at the example, we have clozapine and olanzapine, and they are nothing but the atypical antipsychotics. As mentioned earlier, 5-HT2 is blocked, and there's weak blockage of D2 as well. And it also acts on the alpha-1, H1 and muscarinic receptors. There is blockage as well, and they result in sedation and also hypotension, cause sedation and hypotension. Okay, hypotension and sedation. Now looking at the uses, it is mainly used in case of schizophrenia, and also olanzapine can be used in for schizophrenia as well as mania and bipolar disorders, and this suppresses the positive as well as negative symptoms. If you ask positive symptoms, it is mainly the thought disorders, hallucination, delusions, and the negative symptoms such as social withdrawal, okay, and lack of motivation, okay, things like that. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the adverse effects. Okay, this is with respect to the atypical antipsychotics. Okay, so clozapine, if you look at clozapine closely, this clozapine is it results in sedation as well as salivation and seizures, weight gain, as well as hypotension, as mentioned earlier. Now looking at the dangerous side effect, so the dangerous is nothing but it can cause a granulocytosis. Okay, it results in a granulocytosis, and what is required is regular monitoring is required. Okay, in this case. And looking at the side effects of olanzapine, now looking at olanzapine, the patient can develop a dry mouth, okay, can result in constipation, and there is weight gain, and rarely we can also see EPS, that is extrapyramidal symptoms, can be seen. Okay, and to add a short note, we'll be looking at risperidone as well. This is also an important drug, and as we know, it is a typical antipsychotic. It blocks D2 and 5-HT2 and also the alpha-1 and H1 receptors, alpha-1 adrenergic and H1 receptors, and EPS is low as well. In this, EPS is low and used for treatment of schizophrenia and also mania with bipolar. Okay, so the main drug to choose in case of bipolar or schizophrenia would be olanzapine because of minimal side effects, and it is also a most preferred drug. Now just recapping this page, adverse effect, clozapine can result in sedation, salivation, and also seizures, weight gain, and hypotension. Now looking at olanzapine, so clozapine causes salivation, olanzapine causes dry mouth, okay, and also constipation, weight gain, and regular, okay, it also results in weight gain. Now I missed a point, that is in case of clozapine, it is dangerous, it results in agranulocytosis, okay, and because of this it requires a regular consultation of the physician. Okay, now looking at risperidone, as mentioned earlier, it has all characteristics similar. So it acts on D2, FIHT2, alpha 1 and H1 receptors, and the EPS is reduced, and it results in schizophrenia and mania and bipolar disorders. So it is used in such cases. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at the therapeutic uses. So as mentioned earlier, I'll just shortlist them. So we can use them in case of schizophrenia. Okay, so in case of schizophrenia, we can use them. And looking at, in case of the older drugs for schizophrenia, we can use haloperidol, as well as flufenazine can be used. Okay, now I told you schizophrenia. Now we can look at mania as well. So mania is also treated, and next it can also act as an antiemetic. It can act as a intractable hiccup as well. This is with chlorpromazine. Okay, and also an adjuvant with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor in case of anxiety. Okay, now just looking at therapeutic uses, I'll recap. It can be used in case of schizophrenia, and here we can use drugs such as already mentioned, that is risperidone, olanzapine, clozapine. The older agents that can be used are haloperidol and flufenazine as well. Now looking at the mania, it can be used to treat in case of mania it is used, and the drugs as mentioned are similar, that is risperidone, olanzapine, similar drugs. And looking at anti-epileptic, okay, so phenothiazines, in this case phenothiazine, haloperidol are preferred. So they act as anti-emetic effect. Okay, so in case of anti-emetic effect, this phenothiazines and phenothiazine as well as haloperidol are used. And now looking at intractable hiccup. Okay, so this is treated with chlorpromazine. Now looking at SSRI, it anxiety. Okay, so along with SSRI, it can be used for anxiety as well. Now moving forward, we'll be looking at some. It's an important topic that is we already discussed, and this is nothing but the antidepressants. Okay, so what are these antidepressants? So I'm not dealing with the classifications. I already made a video earlier, so you can refer that. So looking at the antidepressants, the main class we need to know is TCA, that is tricyclic antidepressants. It's an important one. So mentioning examples, we have amitriptyline, amoxapine, nortriptyline, imipramine. Okay, just to name a few. So I've listed the entire classification in the previous video. Now looking at few actions. Okay, TCA, action of TCA. This is nothing but the tricyclic antidepressants. Now looking at the mechanism of action. So looking at the mechanism of action, what happens is TCAs are present here. I'll come back to this explanation later. Okay, so looking at the diagram, so what happens is this TCA, it inhibits the norepinephrine transporter. Okay, so this TCA, it inhibits the NET, that is non-epinephrine transporter, and it blocks the reuptake of norepinephrine into the neurons. Okay, so the neurons, does not enter the norepinephrine does not enter the neuron, and it enhances the availability of norepinephrine at the receptors of this in the CNS. Okay, so they are more available to the receptors of CNS. Okay, now next what we see is TCA. It inhibits the SCRT as well. Okay, and what happens after inhibiting SCRT? There's blockage of reuptake. So there's block of reuptake of 5-HT into neuron, and it's a similar story as we saw in case of norepinephrine, and enhances the availability of 5-HT to the receptors. Okay, so let me just summarize. So we looked at antidepressants, and firstly we saw TCA, that is tricyclic antidepressants, and to name a few examples, I have named amitriptyline, amoxapine, and nortriptyline, and also imipramine. Okay, now looking at the mechanism of action, we have the NE that is inhibited, and also the 5-HT that is inhibited. Okay, so this 5-HT and NE reuptake is inhibited. Because of this, availability of NE and the 5-HT is increased. Okay, it is increased, and it is more available to the receptors in the CNS. Okay, now moving ahead, I'll be discussing some of the pharmacokinetics. Okay, and as we know, it is well absorbed. Okay, through the GI, and it is highly bound to the plasma proteins. Okay, and distributed, wide distribution is also present. Okay, now looking at some effects, actions or effects. Okay, actions or effects. So here what happens is, in case of muscarinic blockade, it results in muscarinic blockade. Okay, and this results in actions such as dry mouth, blurred vision, constipation, as well as increased chances of glaucoma. Okay, and aggravates glaucoma as well. Action on alpha adrenergic blockade. Okay, so in case of muscarinic blockade, it results in dry mouth. Okay, I'll recap later. Now alpha adrenergic blockade results in postural hypotension, results in tachycardia, as well as cardiac arrhythmias. Now it acts on H1 blockade as well. So in case of H1 blockade, it can result in sedation as well as confusion. And this TCA, it acts on the seizures, lowers the seizure threshold. Okay, and can result in precipitation of convulsions. Okay, now let me quickly recap this page. We went through the pharmacokinetics. That is pharmacokinetics. It is well absorbed in the GI, and it is highly bound to the plasma proteins. It has a wide distribution to the tissues, including the CNS. Now looking at the actions, that is muscarinic blockade, it results in dry mouth, blurred visions, and can precipitate glaucoma. And looking at alpha adrenergic blockade, it can result in postural hypotension, tachycardia, and cardiac arrhythmias. Now looking at H1 blockade, it results in sedation and convulsions, and it also lowers the seizure threshold and precipitates convulsions. Okay, this is done. Now moving ahead, we'll be looking at some adverse effects. Okay, We have already recapped this. So next, other point, let me just cross check whether I have covered the points. So it was atropine like, okay, that was muscarinic, and then there was alpha, there was H1 blockade, and there was decreased seizure threshold. So I have covered the points. I am just recapping again. So now moving ahead, we'll be looking at SSRI. Okay, so this is nothing but the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. This is also very important. SSRI. Now looking at the examples of the SSRI, the examples include, so now I think we are running out of time, so I'll just make it 45, or I'll finish it now in few minutes. So there is example, there is SSRI, that is examples can be fluoxetine, fluoxamine, citalopram, escitalopram, and also paroxetine. Okay, you can see the full classification in the previous video. So now looking at the mechanism of action. Okay, so it inhibits the SCRT. So SSRI inhibits SCRT. What is SCRT? It is serotonin transporter. That's it. Serotonin transporter. So it inhibits serotonin transporter. So a blockade of 5-HT into neuron. So reuptake is prevented, and it increases the 5-HT2 receptors. Okay, and enhances serotoninergic activity. Okay, so increases this activity. Now looking at few other points. So in case of SSRI, it is important to note that there is no, okay, I'll write a big no. Okay, so in case of that, there is no anticholinergic effect. There is no hypotension, no sedation, no weight gain as well, and there's no convulsions, and cardiac arrhythmia is also not there, and they are orally active. Okay, now looking at the most longest acting, fluoxetine, it is the longest acting. Okay, now let me just recap what I have told now. So we have discussed the adverse effects in short. So that was nothing but it has muscarinic effects such as dryness of mouth, blurring of vision, constipation, okay, and also can result in glaucoma, precipitation of glaucoma, alpha blockage, that is postural hypertension, tachycardia, cardiac arrhythmias, H1 blockade, that includes sedation, confusion, and also looking at the, it also lowers the threshold, seizures at the threshold, and can may precipitate convulsions. Now we quickly jump down to SSRI, that is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and this what it does, it inhibits SCR, that is nothing but selective okay, it is nothing but selective serotonin transporter. Okay, so serotonin transporter is inhibited, and what happens is the 5-HT, the reuptake into the neurons is prevented. So what happens is there is more availability of 5-HT to the receptors of the CNS. Okay, so that's what is happening. So now looking at some interesting points, that there is no anticholinergic effect, there is no hypotension, there is no sedation, there is no weight gain, okay, and there is no convulsions, precipitation, and there is no, they do not cause cardiac arrhythmias as well. Okay, now looking at fluoxetine, it is nothing but the longest acting SSRI. Okay, so now let's quickly look at the adverse effects of SSRI. So we saw that there is no hypotension, sedation. Now let's look at the adverse effects. So it can result in GI effects such as usual, it's nausea, vomiting, as well as diarrhea can be caused. Okay, and can also result in the heartache, okay, sorry, headache, as well as insomnia, as well as sexual dysfunction, loss of libido, as well as impotence. And it can also result in interaction with other drugs, So now looking at the other drugs, that is in case of sertraline, citalopram, so they have less interactions with them. Okay, they have less potential for the interactions with such drugs. So citalopram, escitalopram, as well as sertraline, what happens is they have less potential for interactions. Now moving ahead, we'll be quickly looking at drug interactions. So I think I'll continue that in the next video. So we'll just recap. So as I told, adverse effects of SSRI, it is GI, that is nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, okay, and also can result in sexual dysfunction, impotence, loss of libido. And looking at the adverse effects, other points, it can, in case of interaction, it results in drug interactions, and drugs such as sertraline, citalopram, and escitalopram, what happens is they have less potential for interaction. This point needs to be memorized. So next, I'll continue in next class. So okay, so till here it is done. So thank you, and hope you liked it. Thank you.